It started with a shape in the dirt. Not a body, not a bone, just an edge. Sunlight filtered through the thick canopy of Douglas firs in the Cascade Mountains as 6 hikers from Portland, taking a detour off the maintained trail, noticed something glinting beneath a patch of disturbed soil. One of them, a biology teacher named Corinne Huxley, crouched to investigate. What she uncovered wasn't natural. It was a metal box, battered, rust-streaked, and locked. The box was handed over to the sheriff's office in Lane County, Oregon, where authorities pried it open. Inside, under layers of degraded wax paper and mildew-blackened documents, was a driver's license issued in 1998. The name was partially legible: Daniel M. Whitaker, born 1976. Below it, a disposable Kodak camera, corroded, and at the bottom a faded map, hand-drawn, marked with 3 red X's. 20 years earlier, Daniel Whitaker had vanished on a solo camping trip into the Cascades. The case was filed as a probable hiking accident. No remains, no signs of foul play, and no explanation ever surfaced. Until now. Daniel was 23 at the time of his disappearance, a recent graduate in environmental engineering from the University of Oregon. According to friends and family, he was quiet, meticulous, and deeply fascinated by remote ecosystems. In the summer of 2002, he told his sister he was taking a few days off-grid to photograph a rare wetland bloom near Blue River Reservoir. He packed his Nissan pickup with gear, maps, and enough food for a week, and was never seen again. The case faded quickly from public memory. The terrain was dangerous, and Daniel had no known enemies, no romantic entanglements. His last known sighting was at a gas station on Route 126, where he purchased fuel, bottled water, and trail mix on July 9th. Surveillance footage showed him alone, calm, nothing out of place. Daniel's family filed a missing persons report on July 14th when he failed to check in with his employer. Search and rescue crews swept the area for 3 days, but were unable to locate his vehicle or any of his belongings. The wilderness swallowed him whole. What reopened the investigation in 2022 wasn't just the box, it was the camera. Forensics managed to extract 5 blurred images from the aged film, each one haunting in its ambiguity. One photo, time-stamped July 10th, showed a pair of boots partially submerged in mud, as if the person had paused mid-stride. Another was a close-up of a worn hiking trail marker, its paint peeling and barely legible. The third image showed a large tree, split at the trunk, with an unusual object tied around it. What appeared to be a red flannel shirt. But it was the fourth photo that sent chills through the room, the rear-view mirror of a vehicle, cracked, reflecting a figure standing behind the car. The shape was distant, blurred and undefined, no face, no clear features, but it was unmistakably a person, and not Daniel. Detectives immediately retrieved archived documents from the original investigation. The original case file was thin, a missing persons form, aerial search logs, and a short series of interviews with Daniel's colleagues and relatives. But something stood out this time. A ranger's report dated July 17th, 2002 described a vehicle parked illegally on a side trail, no plates, partially hidden under a camouflaged tarp. The ranger noted it but did not document the make or model. The coordinates were handwritten in the margin. That side trail, now overgrown and long forgotten, matched the area where the tourists had discovered the box. Within 48 hours of the rediscovery, a new search was deployed, this time with drones and canine units. The box's map, digitally reconstructed, led them deeper into the forest, through ravines, past a dried creek bed, and into an area previously untouched. And then they found it, Daniel's truck, or what was left of it, half sunk into the earth, choked by roots and collapsed branches. The 1997 white Nissan was barely identifiable beneath 2 decades of natural decay. Its tires had burst, and the windshield was opaque with mildew. The driver's side door was unlocked. Inside the cab, investigators found a mold-eaten sleeping bag, a rusted camp stove, a pair of hiking boots, size 11, consistent with Daniel's. The glove box held a gas station receipt, matching the one found in the original file, confirming the vehicle's identity, but no bones, no body, not even clothing fragments. What they did find was something no one could explain. Taped under the passenger seat was a cassette tape, a Maxell UR60, labeled only with a date, July 12, 2002. The tape had degraded, but a fragment was recoverable. Static, wind. Then Daniel's voice. "Something's not right out here. I saw someone, no gear, no pack, just standing, watching me. I moved deeper, but I think he's still following." A long pause. Then, "If I don't come back, check the tree with the red shirt." End of tape. Back in 2002, there had been no mention of a red shirt or an unknown person. The idea of another figure in the woods was new and troubling. Now, 2 decades later, detectives were forced to consider a possibility they had never entertained. Daniel Whitaker may not have disappeared by accident. Someone may have been out there with him. As night fell over the reopened investigation site, search teams set up temporary lights. They would return to the location marked by the third red X on the map the next morning. Whatever waited at that final point might change everything. Buried under years of silence, something had been left behind. The morning after the discovery of Daniel's truck, search teams and forensic units returned to the forest. The final red X on the hand-drawn map, roughly a mile northeast of the vehicle, lay beyond the usual hiking routes, through a dense pocket of second-growth forest. The terrain was uneven, littered with deadfall and invasive brush. It took over 2 hours to reach the site. What they found wasn't obvious at first. Then someone noticed the rocks, stacked deliberately in a low, uneven pyramid, partially swallowed by moss. At its base was a narrow depression in the earth, like a collapsed animal burrow. When investigators began carefully removing the stones, they uncovered a metal ammunition box, sealed with a rusted latch. Inside was a faded spiral-bound notebook, wrapped in a plastic bag, and a single Polaroid photograph. The notebook, soaked and brittle, had to be stabilized before it could be fully examined. Its cover bore a single name, written in pencil, D. Whitaker. The contents were fragmentary, but legible sections described wildlife sightings, trail coordinates, and odd occurrences, tree markings not on map, crackling on shortwave, and finally, man in red jacket watching from ridge again. Same place. The photograph was more difficult to interpret. It showed a wide clearing with a wooden structure, half shed, half lean-to, almost camouflaged against the trees. In front of it, just barely in frame, stood a figure in a dark jacket. The face was turned away. The image had no date stamp, no identifying features, except one, a distinctive orange hat on the structure's roof. This changed everything. Back in Eugene, a retired forestry surveyor named Ed Colson recognized the photo from a press briefing. He called the sheriff's office the next day. In 1998, he documented a series of unauthorized structures built deep in the Willamette National Forest. Squatters, survivalists, sometimes illegal cannabis grows. One of the structures was identical to the one in the photograph. It had been reported, noted on a now declassified survey map, and dismantled in late 2002 by rangers. But according to the ranger logs, there was one cabin in the region that had never been found again. Coordinates had been logged, but follow-up inspections claimed it no longer existed. Those coordinates matched the red X. Detectives now had a timeline. July 9th, 2002. Daniel Whitaker departs for his trip. July 10th, last confirmed image from the recovered camera. July 12th, audio recorded on tape mentioning a man watching. July 14th, reported missing. July 17th, Ranger notes an unregistered vehicle hidden near a side trail. They pulled archived call logs from July 2002, landlines, payphones, and emergency services from the area. One record stood out. On the evening of July 13th, a call was placed from a payphone in the town of Blue River. It lasted 42 seconds and was made to a number later confirmed to be the office of Daniel's thesis advisor, Dr. Helena Mark. No voicemail was left. The caller had used an alias, Jack Lawn. The name meant nothing at first, but buried in an old interview from the initial investigation was a note. During college, Daniel had once told a friend that if he ever felt unsafe on a trip, he would leave a message using a code name, Jack Lawn, a character from a survival novel he'd loved as a teen. The implication was clear. Daniel had tried to warn someone, but Dr. Mark had never known about the code. She'd dismissed the call as a wrong number. With renewed urgency, detectives revisited the original witness list. One stood out. A man named Vince Marlowe, who had been questioned in 2002 after a tip from another camper. He had been living semi-permanently in the forest at the time and was known to carry a shortwave radio and a camera. His campsite had been less than 3 miles from where Daniel's truck was now found. Back then, he denied seeing anything. No connection was ever made. Marlowe's current location was unknown. He had vanished from public records in 2008. A background check revealed more. In 1995, Marlowe had been questioned in connection with the disappearance of another hiker, never charged. The only item found from that case, a piece of map, hand-drawn with red markings. Detectives also reviewed forensic results from Daniel's truck. Under the floor mat on the passenger side, they recovered partial biological residue, degraded but viable. Initial DNA testing returned a 48% match to Daniel's maternal line. In the rear seat, however, was a second, unknown profile. No match in the national database. Gender, male, likely age at the time, 30 to 45. There had been someone else in the vehicle. Another breakthrough came when the corroded Kodak camera's internal numbering was cross-referenced with other photographs recovered. It revealed a discrepancy. The camera model stored 24 photos, but only 5 were recovered. 19 exposures were missing. Some frames had likely been manually removed before the camera was stored in the buried box, meaning someone had gone through Daniel's belongings before the box was hidden. The theory of an accident no longer held weight. The box, the notebook, the structure, and the DNA now formed a triangulation, one that pointed to human involvement, potential foul play, and the central figure whose name kept returning in hushed tones among rangers and older residents, Vincent Marlowe. A man who had once lived just off the grid, but never too far from where others disappeared. The final red X was now marked as an active crime scene. A new search was scheduled with ground-penetrating radar and forensic archaeologists. Drone surveillance of the terrain revealed subtle indentations near the cabin site, unnatural ground shifts, likely due to past digging or collapse. And then came the unexpected shift, a call from a landowner near Cougar Reservoir. 2 weeks prior to the hiker's discovery, his dog had brought something back from the woods. It wasn't bones, it was a cassette tape, same model, same date, July 12, 2002. The tape was degraded, but the last few seconds played clearly. A new voice, not Daniel's, slower, deeper. "You should have stayed on the trail." By the time the second tape was confirmed authentic, Lane County authorities had pivoted from a reopened missing persons case to a full-scale homicide investigation. The audio analysis team isolated the mysterious voice. It was a single sentence, low and distorted. "You should have stayed on the trail." Though too brief for full voice recognition, experts noted the cadence and tone matched informal speech patterns common in older Northwest rural dialects. Someone who had grown up isolated, possibly uneducated, but calm, deliberate. This wasn't a stranger in the woods. This was someone who had lived in them. Investigators circled back to Vincent Marlowe. Born in 1955 in Walla Walla, Washington, Marlowe had grown up between foster homes and temporary shelters. In the 1980s, he drifted through Oregon and Northern California, working odd jobs and often living in temporary shacks on national land. Two incidents surfaced in his background: a trespassing charge near Cottage Grove in 1987 and a 1995 report in connection with the disappearance of 29-year-old hiker Greg Jensen, who vanished less than 5 miles from where Daniel Whitaker's truck would eventually be found. Jensen's case was never solved, but a trail camera, still relatively rare in the 90s, captured a blurry figure near his last known location. Later attempts to enhance the image were inconclusive. In 2002, Marlowe had been living off-grid near Blue River, surviving on food stamps and salvage, sometimes bartering hand-carved goods in town. The original investigators had dismissed him then. There had been no evidence, but the pattern was clearer now. Remote locations, hikers, no witnesses, all within a tight radius. The discovery of Daniel's notebook and the recovered map sent detectives to the state archives. In a back room of the Eugene Field Office, they found a neglected manila folder marked Wilderness Threat Reports, 2000-2003. Inside, Ranger incident forms, mostly unsubstantiated, but one caught their attention. Dated July 11, 2002, it described a call from a female camper near the Fall Creek area. She had reported being watched from a tree line by a man in dark clothes with a tool belt, who did not respond when she called out. The woman left the area the same day and was never followed up with. Her name, Angela Crenshaw. Detectives tracked Angela down in Corvallis, now 54. She was startled to be contacted, but remembered the encounter vividly. She described the man as unusually still, almost part of the trees, and remembered thinking that something was off about his posture. When asked to look at a 2002-era photograph of Vincent Marlowe, she hesitated, then said, "That might have been him." It wasn't a positive ID, but it was a thread. While investigators prepared to reopen the Fall Creek sector, the forensic team returned with preliminary results from the soil beneath the third red X. Ground-penetrating radar had revealed a pattern inconsistent with natural erosion. There was a rectangular cavity, about 2 feet by 6, surrounded by broken stone. On the third day of excavation, searchers found remnants of a foundation, possibly the remains of the original structure seen in the Polaroid. Nearby, buried under layers of decomposing pine and earth, they recovered a fragment of synthetic fabric, a torn patch from a backpack shoulder strap. Forensic tests confirmed it was a match to a 2002 REI internal frame model. The same model Daniel Whitaker had purchased months before his disappearance. But it wasn't the only thing they found. Behind the structure, under a collapsed beam, searchers uncovered a series of carved notches in the base of an old cedar tree. 7 vertical cuts, followed by a space, and then 5 more. Below the markings, carved in rough slashes, Jack Lawn. It was deliberate. A message. When investigators returned to Daniel's sister, Michelle Whitaker, she revealed something chilling. Daniel had always been obsessed with codes and puzzles. He'd kept field journals where each page began with a prime number-based timestamp. The Jack Lawn reference, she confirmed again, was part of a childhood code. And then she remembered something else. 2 months before he vanished, Daniel had mailed her a postcard. The message was ordinary, but the return address read, P.O. Box 42, Green Branch, OR. Green Branch was a ghost town. It hadn't had a post office since 1974. Detectives now suspected Daniel had planned this trip knowing there was risk, that he had encountered someone on a previous hike, someone he intended to document. But what was the motive? Why would a reclusive man like Marlowe, if he was responsible, target hikers? That answer came partially and unexpectedly from a retired police dispatcher named Reed Maguire, who came forward after seeing news coverage. In 2004, he claimed, a man matching Marlowe's description came into a general store outside Vida asking to use the payphone. He gave a false name, but Reed had remembered it because the man carried a folder labeled BLM Boundary Disputes. He asked for directions to Fall Creek, then left without making a call. It was only a lead, but the folder indicated something else. Marlowe may have believed the land was his, or at least his by use. The theory took shape. A man living in claimed isolation who believed outsiders were trespassers. Hikers became threats, intruders. And Daniel, with his camera, his maps, his field notes, was documenting it all. The second cassette, found by the dog, had more audio than initially reported. After cleaning and digital enhancement, analysts recovered a few seconds of what sounded like a confrontation. Daniel's voice again, low, urgent. "I just want to leave, that's all. You can keep it." Then, faint movement, wood creaking. The sound of something heavy being dragged. The FBI officially entered the case. A task force was established to locate Marlowe. But there was a problem. No confirmed sighting of him had occurred since 2008. Tax records, utilities, and ID logs showed nothing. He had vanished until someone found a prepaid storage unit in Oak Ridge registered to a V Lane, an alias connected to Marlowe from a 1995 misdemeanor. Inside were sealed containers. In one of them, wrapped in burlap, were dozens of Polaroids, unlabeled, many decayed, but several showed campers and hikers, photographed from a distance. Most were unidentifiable, but one was Daniel Whitaker, sitting on a log, writing in his notebook. Another showed the back of Daniel's head inside a cabin, unknowing. The timestamp on the photo was July 11th, 2002. And the last photo in the box, a tree, the same tree with the notches, with one difference. In the photo, someone was standing next to it, just barely visible, wearing an orange hat. The orange hat was key. It had appeared in the original Polaroid from the buried cache, resting on the roof of the cabin. And now it appeared again, on the head of a man whose figure was barely captured, beside the tree marked with notches. This second photograph, retrieved from the storage unit in Oak Ridge, had no timestamp and no context. But forensic photo analysts enhanced the image, isolating facial contours and height approximations. The proportions, age profile, and posture were consistent with Vincent Marlowe. For the first time, authorities had something close to direct visual confirmation linking Marlowe to Daniel Whitaker's last known location. In late March 2023, using land registry overlays, the task force mapped every undocumented structure ever reported in the Blue River Fall Creek corridor. A pattern emerged. Each structure fell within a 10-mile radius of the 3 red X's from Daniel's hand-drawn map. Within that same radius, 4 other unsolved disappearances had occurred between 1989 and 2004. All hikers, all presumed lost to the forest. 3 had never been found. Detectives returned to the area near the 3rd X to re-excavate the site. This time, they went deeper beneath the collapsed structure, beneath the cedar roots, to a layer that hadn't been reached before. On the second day, a team unearthed a partially decomposed canvas tarp, wrapped tightly around a bundle of material. Inside, they found skeletal remains, human, partial, and severely degraded. Dental records later confirmed what many feared: Daniel Whitaker's remains. The recovery was incomplete. The cranium was missing, so were most of the extremities. But the remnants of a belt, a weathered hiking boot, and a metal field compass, engraved with the initials DW, were found with the remains. The tarp had been buried beneath a matrix of burned and compressed soil. Forensic fire analysts concluded the site had been deliberately scorched using petroleum accelerant, likely in 2002 or early 2003. Someone had tried to erase the grave. And yet, Daniel had managed to leave behind his map, his notes, his photographs, and his voice. The storage unit in Oak Ridge yielded more than photographs. In the back of the metal container, hidden beneath sealed cans of powdered milk and hunting knives, was a military-style satchel. Inside, cassette tapes, many labeled by date. Only 4 were playable. They were ambient recordings, sounds of the forest, creek beds, rainfall. But one tape contained intermittent voices, a man speaking to himself, rambling, repeating phrases like, "They're not supposed to be here. I warned him. No one listens to the land." And finally, "He took my picture. I buried the box. He won't come back." Forensic linguists compared the voice to Marlowe's known speech from a 1993 court deposition. It was inconclusive, but heavily suggestive, enough for the U.S. Attorney's Office to file a federal fugitive notice. Interpol was contacted, watch lists were updated, but Marlowe was already gone. A potential sighting came in May 2023, southern British Columbia. A gas station attendant in Kamloops reported a man matching Marlowe's description, filling up an old white Ford van with no plates. He paid cash and left quickly. The video footage was inconclusive. No further sightings were confirmed. Daniel Whitaker's body was returned to his family in June, 21 years after he vanished. The coroner's report listed cause of death as homicidal violence by unknown mechanism. No weapon was recovered, no confirmed suspect was arrested. But in the report's appendix, a small note from the lead forensic anthropologist read, "Skull base missing. Cervical vertebrae show evidence of sudden disarticulation. Michelle Whitaker requested no public service." In a quiet moment after the funeral, she handed over one of Daniel's old notebooks to detectives. On the first page, written in 2002, Daniel had scribbled a passage from John Muir. "In every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks." But in the margins, he'd written something else, something more haunting. "If you find this, then I didn't make it back, but I saw him. I know what he did. I left the trail open." Today, Daniel Whitaker's case remains open in Lane County, officially reclassified as an unsolved homicide. The FBI continues to monitor tips regarding Vincent Marlowe, now presumed to be in his 70s. Despite exhaustive efforts, no charges have been filed. Of the other 3 disappearances linked to the area, 2 have been re-examined in light of the new evidence. One, Greg Jensen's, was formally reopened. His case file contained an eerie echo, a hand-drawn map with 2 red X's. The forest preserves its silence. The trees grow over the paths, and with every passing year, the weight of absence grows heavier. But for Michelle, and those like her, the forest no longer holds only loss, it holds answers, fragmented, painful, incomplete, but answers. And sometimes, even that is enough.